A very good morning to all. Today we're going to do the remaining part of profitability ratios. Here, particularly, we're going to discuss in detail the operating ratio and the operating profit ratio. Operating profit ratio or operating first one is operating ratio. Operating ratio is cost of goods sold plus operating expenses by net sales into 100. Well, you all know what is cost of goods sold. I think I don't have to give an explanation to that. We have done enough sums based on COGS, right? Now, to find the operating expenses are expenses that are directly connected for running the business to earn the profit. Anything which is straight away connected to the main operation of the business. Any expenses incurred in respect to the main operations of business is called as an operating expenses. Now, there are few things that we need to keep in mind before we start questions based on this. Some of them are cost of goods sold plus operating expenses is called as an operating cost. So, the numerator of this ratio can also be called as an operating cost. So, operating ratio can be written as operating cost by sales into 100. So, what is operating cost consist of? Cost of goods sold plus operating expenses. Now, operating expenses is what and all. What and all will come under operating expenses? All administrative, distributive, selling, amortization and depreciation expenses. So all these will be part of operating activities. So it's called as an operating expenses, except finance expenses, okay? Interest on loan borrowed, etc., interest on debentures, etc. All this will not come under operating expenses. A very important point, loss on sale of fixed asset is a non-operating expense because it's a capital loss, and profit on sale of fixed asset is a capital gain, therefore it is a non-operating income. So both of this have no place in finding the operating ratio. All right. So operating ratio is nothing but cost of goods sold plus operating expenses by net sales into 100. Right. Now the next one is operating profit ratio. The next one is operating profit ratio. Now operating profit ratio equals operating profit by net sales into 100. Now operating profit can be found out by gross profit minus operating expenses plus operating income. The previous video in which I discussed gross profit and net profit ratio, I did showed you a pro forma of profit and loss account. Do remember that that is more easier to do rather than writing a statement like this. Operating profit equals gross profit minus operating expenses plus operating income. This is if we take the route through the gross profit way. If we take the route through the net profit way, it is net profit plus non-operating expenses less non-operating incomes. Okay, net profit, add non-operating expenses, subtract non-operating income. So based on the given information in the question, we can decide whether we need to take the first form or the second form. Now again, there are few things need to be keep in mind while doing these questions based on these two ratios, like operating profit or operating ratio, operating ratio and operating profit ratio. The first important one is both of these ratios are complementary to each other. They are complementary to each other. That means their sum will be 100. So if in a question they want us to find the operating ratio, but operating profit ratio is given, so 100 minus operating profit ratio will be operating ratio. Assume that operating profit ratio is 30%. So what will be operating ratio then? 70%. Understood? So this is a very important point to keep in mind while doing sums based on these two ratios. So let's start sums from the textbook now. So here are the sums from the textbook. Cost of question number 124 and 125. Cost of revenue from operation or cost of goods sold is given as 3 lakh. Operating expenses is 1,20,000. Cost of goods sold 3 lakh. Operating expenses 1,20,000. Revenue from operation, cash sales and sales return is given. Calculate the operating ratio. Now what is operating ratio equals? Operating ratio equals cost of goods sold plus operating expenses by net sales into 100. Right? Now, cost of goods sold equals 3 lakh, which is directly available in the question. Operating expenses also given to us. So operating expenses given as 1,20,000. Therefore, the numerator, or I would say the operating cost, works out to 4,20,000. Alright. Now, revenue from sales is not the gross sales, but it's a net sales. So net sales will be, net sales is a cash sales minus sales return. So as you can see in the question, it is given 5,20,000 and return as 20. So therefore, net sales works out to 5 lakh. Hence, this will be 4,20,000 by 5 lakh into 100. So this way we get it as 42 divided by 50 into 100, which is 84%. Okay, so that's 124 for you all. Now 125. 125 is even more easier than the 124 question because informations are directly available. The only thing you should not get confused with cost of revenue from operation with that of the operating cost, isn't it? Operating cost is what? What is operating cost? Operating cost is cost of goods sold plus operating expenses. So when that is given to us, which means the numerator of the required formula is given to us, what are we going to do with the COGS? So operating ratio equals, this time I'm going to write it as operating cost divided by net sales into 100. Please remember, operating cost is operating expenses plus cost of goods sold. So 6 lakh divided by net sales 12 lakhs into 100. So that works out to 50%. Okay. So the 124 and 125 is over. Question number 124. Cost of revenue from operation is given as 2,20,000. Revenue from operation, which is net sales, is given as 3,20,000. Selling expenses is 12,000. Office expenses is 8,000. Depreciation is 6,000, and find the operating ratio. So operating ratio is equal to cost of goods sold plus operating expenses. Cost of goods sold is given as 2,20,000. Next, I have to list out all the operating expenses. Selling expenses and operating expense, office expenses and operating expense, depreciation and amortization like goodwill, anything written off is also an operating expense. So all this will contribute towards the operating cost, which is 2,46,000. And what is operating ratio? Operating ratio is operating cost, which is 2,46,000 divided by net sales, which is given in the question as 3,20,000 into 100, which you get it as 76.875%. This is for the first case of the 127. Now when you do the second case, revenue from operation, which is cash sales and credit sales, total is given. So when you add them, you get the net sales. Okay, so net sales equals 5 lakh. Gross profit is 1 lakh. What is missing here? COGS. So when gross profit is given as 1 lakh, what will be cost of goods sold? Sales minus GP is COGS, isn't it? So therefore, COGS will be 4 lakh rupees. So when COGS is 4 lakh, I need to add operating expenses to that. So operating ratio equals operating cost, which is COGS 4 lakh, plus operating expenses. And over here, only office and selling is given. So you add 50,000 divided by the net sales, which is 5 lakh. So 4 lakh 50 divided by 5 lakh into 100, which is 90%. So this is second case. Let's do 128. It is said in the question that cost of revenue from operation is 52,000. Operating expenses as 18,000. Gross sales as 88,000. Sales return as 8,000. So the first thing is to find the net sales. So what is net sales is equal to gross sales minus sales return. So that forms 80,000. Now we need COGS, which is given in the question as 52,000. And then operating expenses is also given, which is 18,000. Cost of goods sold plus operating expenses is operating cost, which is 70,000. So operating ratio equals operating cost by net sales into 100. 70,000 divided by 80,000 into 100. So that is 87.5 percentage. Now 129. Find cost of revenue from operations. So that means here the missing information we need to find, and operating ratio is given as 75%. So 75 equals cost of goods sold plus operating expenses divided by net sales into 100. So 75 equals cost of goods sold is a missing info. Operating expenses is 1 lakh rupees. Net sales is 12 lakh into 100. Now find out the missing value. 2 zeros will get cancelled. 75 into 12,000 equals COGS plus 1 lakh. So after the calculation, we get cost of goods sold as 8 lakh rupees, which is the answer given in the question, as you can see here. Now let's go to the 130th question, and that says operating cost is 6 lakh 80, gross profit is 25%, operating expenses is 18,000. Well, when operating cost is given, which is operating expenses plus cost of goods sold, isn't it? So using these two information, I can find COGS, right? Can you see here there is a hint given? So you can definitely go through the hint and get it as COGS as 6 lakh rupees. So once you get COGS, gross profit is given to us, isn't it? Generally, gross profit is calculated on sales, right? So now we are going to consider GP ratio in order to find the the sales amount. Cost of goods sold 6 lakhs, which we found out. Gross profit ratio 25%. Gross profit ratio is calculated on sales, isn't it? So let sales be 100. So GP is what? 25. So therefore, cost is equal to 75. Now do the variation. Sales and cost. If the sale is 100, the cost is 75. So to have a cost of 6 lakh rupees, what should be the sale amount? So sale is equal to direct variation 6 lakhs into 100 divided by 75. So this works out to 8 lakh rupees. So sales we found. Now operating ratio is equal to operating cost, which is cost of goods sold 6 lakh, plus operating expenses, which is given in the question as 80,000, divided by sales, which is 8 lakh, into 100. Okay, so this is how we find the operating ratio for the last question. Next, we are moving into operating profit ratio. Next question, 131, but here we have to find operating profit ratio. Revenue from sales, which is net sales, given as 9 lakh. Gross profit is 25% on cost. Operating expenses 45,000. Calculate operating profit ratio. Now, what is operating profit ratio? Operating profit ratio equals operating profit divided by net sales into 100. Operating profit divided by net sales into 100. Okay, so to find the operating profit, there are two ways. Gross profit, add operating expenses, subtract operating expenses, add operating incomes. This is how we find gross profit, subtract operating expenses and add operating income. Or you can go by the net profit way, but here in the question gross profit is discussed, so we will go the gross profit way. Gross profit is 25% on cost, so let the cost be 100. Let the cost be 100. So GP will be 25% of 100, which is 25. Hence, sales will be 125, isn't it? Sales will be 125. What do we need here? We need only gross profit, isn't it? So we need gross profit and we know the sales. So sales, gross profit. When sales is 125, profit is 25. To have a sale of 9 lakh rupees, what should be the gross profit? So 9 lakh into 25 divided by 125. So 9 lakh into 25 by 125 is 1,80,000, which is the gross profit. Now once you get the gross profit minus operating expenses is your net sales, isn't it? Operating profit. So operating profit is gross profit minus operating expenses. So that works out to 1,80,000 minus 45,000. 1,80,000 minus 45, which is 1,35,000. Now operating profit ratio is 1,35,000 divided by net sales, which is 9 lakh into 100. Okay, divided by 9 lakh into 100, which works out to 15%. Works out to the next question. Operating cost is given and operating expense is given. So what will be cost of goods sold? Cost of goods sold is equal to operating cost minus operating expenses. So 3,40,000 minus 20 will be 3,20,000. Gross profit ratio is 20%. When they simply say gross profit ratio, it is calculated on sales. Okay, so gross profit 20% on sales. So we take sales as 100 here. Let sales be 100. Gross profit will be 20 then. So cost will be 80 rupees. Again, variation. Cost, GP. When cost is 80, GP is 20. So to have a cost of 3,20,000, what is the GP? 3,20,000 into 20 by 80, that is 1/4. So 3,20,000 divided by 3,20,000 divided by 4. Yes. Which works out to 80,000. So we found gross profit. Gross profit minus operating expenses is operating profit. So operating profit equals 80,000 minus 20,000, 60,000. So operating profit ratio will be 60,000 divided by sales, which is Did we find sales? No, we didn't find sales, but we can definitely find, because it's 3,20,000 cost of goods sold, profit is 80, so sales will be 4 lakh, isn't it? Into 100. So now the 133 question. 133 is revenue from operation is 5 lakh, 2 lakh is cost of revenue, wage is direct, and office expenses. Interest on borrowings we won't take, because this is an finance expenses, not part of operating profit. Hence, first thing we need to find is the gross profit here. So sales minus COGS will give us gross profit, which is 5 lakh minus 2 lakhs. So gross profit becomes 3 lakhs. All right. And gross profit minus operating expenses. What is operating? Wage 1 lakh and office and administrative 50. So operating expenses totals to 1,50,000. So remaining 1,50,000 will be the operating profit here. So operating profit ratio equals operating profit 1,50,000 divided by sales 5 lakh divided by sales 5 lakh into 100. So this is how we do this particular one. Okay, I would like to make a small correction to this question. Wage is given here, but it is already part of cost of revenue from operation. Wage is a direct expenses. So I beg your pardon. Direct expenses, which wage is a direct expense. So it is already forming a part of cost of goods sold, isn't it? How do we find cost of goods sold? Opening stock plus purchase plus direct expenses minus closing stock. So direct expenses has already been considered while calculating COGS. Hence, I should not take wage again when I find out the operating profit. So I'm correcting here with the red pen. Operating profit should be not 1,50,000, but instead it is just 50,000. So therefore, this figure will be 2,50,000, and hence we get 2,50,000 divided by 5 lakh into 100. That forms at 50% as your operating profit ratio. Coming to the last question now. Opening inventory is given in the question, which is opening stock. Purchase is given, sales is given, closing inventory is given, loss by fire is given, dividend received is given. Loss by fire is a non-operating expense. Dividend is a non-operating income. So both will not be considered. So opening profit plus purchase, closing stock and sales will let you to find the gross profit figure. And gross profit minus 1,70,000, which is administrative expenses, will give you operating profit. And operating profit divided by sales, 14,70,000, will be operating profit ratio here. So I'm directly going to write the figures. 134. So as I said in the beginning, opening profit plus purchase, which works out to, there we go. Gross profit is 5,20,000, which I found it by opening profit plus purchase. Sales plus closing stock minus opening inventory minus purchase. So literally I'm preparing a rough trading account. So with that I get gross profit as 5,20,000 less administrative and selling expenses of 1,70,000 will give you operating profit 3,50,000. Now operating profit divided by sales into 100 is operating expenses. So this is how we find the operating profit ratio for question number 134. With this, I finished doing the important sums of profitability ratio. If you have a doubt, please watch it one more time, scroll and do it one more time, attempt all the sum, don't leave any question. This way you understand the concept very well. Thank you.